for joining me. I've got my friend Andy Storch here with us today. I am so excited to dive in with Andy today, and I think you are going to walk away with a gajillion ideas, just like I do every time I chat with him. So Andy, thanks so much for being here.
Valerie, thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored and I appreciate it. I always love talking with you, and I know we're going to have a great conversation today.
Yeah. So one of the things that is really unique about Andy, as opposed to other, a lot of times I talk with marketing people who are like in marketing and do it for other people, whether it's like some specialty within marketing or they're a generalist or whatever. But Andy has a specialty in the career talent development space. He works a lot with corporate folks. He works a lot with individuals. He's written an amazing book. I'm going to let him share more about that here in a second, but he does a really great job of telling that story to his audience. He's really proactive about getting the book and the projects that he's working on into people's, stratosphere. So I was really excited to have Andy come and share some of his insights because, recently he shared some really fun, tactical things of how he gets in front of people in the corporate space to help promote his trainings and his consulting and all of that. And as a marketer, I walked away from that with a bunch of just reminders, but also some new ideas of like, wow, I'd never thought about that. So I'm really excited to have you here, Andy.
Well, thank you, Valerie. And I'm not a marketer. I haven't worked in the field of marketing, but I run my own business as an author, speaker, consultant, et cetera. And I am obsessed with the idea of marketing and self-promotion and getting your name out there, because I know that's how you grow a business in this day and age.
Yeah, well, and you do a really good job of it. So I'm really excited to have you kind of share a little bit about what's worked for you, maybe, and what's maybe not worked that you've tried and you decided to scrap. So, but before we dive too far, why don't you tell people a little bit about your book, a little bit about some of your programs, the training that you do, because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple different parts of my business. My book is called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. And I really specialize in working with companies and organizations to grow or improve engagement and retention by helping their people take ownership of their careers. The book is designed to help people stop drifting and really take ownership of their career, take control of their future. And I do a lot of that in companies through speaking. I do a lot of keynote speaking. Most of it's been virtual over the last couple of years. And I also have an online course and a training program that I run in companies as well. That's the main part of my business, and it's all focused on this mission of helping more people own their careers. I also do a lot of work in the talent development space. As you mentioned, I've got a podcast called the Talent Development Hot Seat, and I run a membership community called the Talent Development Think Tank. I hosted a conference a couple of years ago that turned into this online community that has over 100 members who pay on an annual or monthly basis to be part of this community, to connect with each other. We bring in guest speakers and stuff like that all around this idea of talent development. And then, I do a few other little things here and there, some coaching. I have another podcast I started in the NFT space called My NFT Journey, just to kind of share my journey and passion and fascination with that space. And as you and I were talking before we started recording, entrepreneurs, you do all kinds of little things, but the main focus and mission is on helping more people take ownership of their careers, working with large companies, speaking and training, and getting the book and the message in front of more people, which is where the marketing comes in handy.
Yeah. So what do you, when you're talking with people, how do you define owning your career? What does that mean?
Yeah. So owning your career means taking full responsibility for everything going on in your career and your life. You could kind of treat your career like it's a business. The buck stops with you. Lots of different things could be happening around you. And there are certainly many things that are outside of our control, whether it be your boss or the economy or, company leadership, politics, et cetera. But it's about really focusing on the things that are within your control, how you show up, the type of work you take on. And then in addition to taking full responsibility, it's setting a vision, having an idea of where you want to go with your career, and not waiting for other people to tell you what to do, because so many people, one of the big reasons why I wrote the book, so many people are drifting through their careers. They're operating in reaction mode. They're waiting for other people to tell them what to do, whether it be their manager or their parents or somebody else. And it's about taking control of that, taking the initiative to set those goals, get clarity on a future, a vision for where you want to go in the future, taking action towards that, and then doing things to help set yourself up for future success, which we can go into. That's kind of the middle section of my book, which includes investing in continuous learning, building your network, and building your personal brand.
Yeah. Before we hit record, we kind of were talking about this because a lot of people that, like, as a business owner, you're regularly thinking about how you show up in the world, what your brand looks like, what your brand is to other people. But I remember before I branched off and started my own business, I never really thought much about how I had a personal brand. I was working for somebody else. I was getting the paycheck. I had this forward thinking of, like, this is where I want to be eventually, but I really didn't think about, how, that there were certain things that I could do. And whether I liked it or not, I had a personal brand. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of how intentional I was with it. So I
Yeah.
wonder, what do you see with people? Do you feel like most people realize this, or do you feel like most people were like I was, and just like they're going and doing the job, they're going and doing the thing, but they're not really giving much intentional thought around the personal brand side of things?
Yeah. This is a big, missing piece for a lot of people out there in the corporate world. For us as entrepreneurs, we've been taught over the last few years, and we need to be thinking about our personal brand and this idea of building a personal brand business. But a lot of people in the corporate space don't think about that yet, when it really is essential. It really is something that's very important to help you set yourself up for future success. Because as you mentioned, a personal brand is nothing more than your reputation. It's what people think and say about you, whether you're around or you're not around, most likely when you're not, right? And we all have a brand, we all have a reputation, whether we're intentional about it or not. So my philosophy is we might as well start to be intentional about that. There are things you can do to build a better brand, to build a reputation, that will get you more opportunities in the future. And it's not about being fake or inauthentic. I'm all about authenticity. You want to be yourself, but it's about being thoughtful about how you're showing up in the world and what sort of message or brand you are portraying and what sort of reputation you're creating. Because, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, like, your brand, your reputation is what people say about you when you're not in the room. When you go up for that next promotion or you apply for a job and that conversation is happening about, oh, well, should we hire Valerie or should we not? You're not going to be in the room, right? It's going to come
Right.
down to what do they think about you? And that could be influenced simply by a couple interviews. It could be influenced by work they've done with you. And that is going to be influenced again by how did you show up? How do you treat other people? How well do you collaborate? Are you pleasant to work with, or are you, kind of standoffish and difficult? And people don't think about that enough. And it can be impacted just a little bit by having in the back of your mind, how am I acting in the way that I'm acting today? How is that going to impact my brand? How could this impact my reputation? How am I showing up? What are people going to think of me? It's a big reason why I try to bring a lot of energy to every interaction that I have, right? Whether it be a podcast interview, a keynote, or just a conversation with a potential new client, to bring positivity, to bring energy. It's all part of my brand and who I want to portray. It's part of who I am.
Sure.
But it's also in the back of my mind, like, okay, this is another interaction with a person who will have some type of thought after this conversation, right? Like, oh,
Right.
I
Well,
really like
lasting
talking with him,
impression.
or I never want to talk to that guy again, right? Like, we all have those thoughts after we have interactions and we have conversations with people. Like, it's very natural, it's psychological, it's going to happen whether we want to or not. So I think it's important to be thoughtful about how we're approaching all of our interactions, the work that we're doing, the type of work, how we're treating others. And that's all in like what we're doing in real life or in our jobs. But there's also how we interact with people on social media, right? What sort of content do we put out there?
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, do we
That's
comment
a
and
big
support
thing.
other people's content? And that, of course, influences our brand. And if you're going out for a new job, you and I are running businesses, right? And I create content almost daily on LinkedIn and other places to build my brand for my business. But even if you're a corporate professional, you think about future jobs. If you think recruiters and other hiring professionals are not going to go look you up on LinkedIn and see if you've posted any content or commented on other people's stuff, you might be wrong about that. I think people
Right.
are looking at those things, and it all ties into building your brand.
Yeah, I think I even saw just a friend of mine who's a high school teacher. She just was talking about kind of the ignorance of young professionals who
Hmm.
don't realize that the stuff that they're putting out on TikTok, the stuff they're putting out on Instagram, that all of that's searchable as well.
Yeah.
I think that conversation's been had now for many years. And obviously, teenagers are new every day, so they have to be taught that on a regular basis. But
Yeah.
as an adult, we know like, hey, if you're posting pictures of you out doing, illegal stuff or
Mhm.
whatever, like a recruiter is going to find it. Like if I
Right.
can find it on a quick Google search,
Yeah. Arguing
the
about
recruiter
politics or
can.
shaming other people or, whatever, just
Yeah,
thinking like, oh, I'll be mean online and I'll be nice to people in real life. Like, no, no, no. Someone's going to find that.
exactly. That's the piece though, that it feels more subtle. People don't realize that the tone that they put out, the responses they have to things, the comments that they're putting on things, like
Yeah.
if they're negative, if they're mean, that's going to be a huge turnoff
Yeah.
for
But
hiring
like
managers and
going beyond
recruiters.
that, I think a lot of people could say like, yeah, of course, I know. I'm not going to go like judging, shaming people or criticizing people online because I know that can come back to me. But let's talk about the positive things you could be doing.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people get stuck and say, well, I'd like to maybe post something or create some content, but I don't really know what to share. You can be sharing the things that you're learning and the things that you're doing, right? Like, oh, I just read this interesting article, or I just listened to Valerie's podcast and here's, with this guy, Andy Storch, and here's 3 takeaways. I just read this book. Here are my 3 takeaways. And I see people doing that. And it always, I love seeing that because it's an opportunity to put content out there. You don't have to create the content, right? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
original. You're putting your spin on it. You're giving recommendations to people in your network who might benefit from listening to that podcast or reading that book or that article. And you're
Yep.
showing that you are someone who is interested in learning about whatever that subject might be. So if you work in marketing and once a week you post an article from a marketing journal or something you've read that's
Yep.
about the latest trends in marketing, and you just do that once a week for the next year, then
Yeah.
anybody who might be hiring in the future can go back and look at that and say, wow, this woman is very interested in learning and keeping up in the latest trends because she's always reading articles and posting
Hmm.
about them. She is the type of person I want working my organization because I don't want someone who just knows it all because things are changing so fast. I want someone who is endlessly curious and always interested in learning about the latest thing because I know I'm going to hire her. Then 6 months later, the whole industry is going to change. And I need someone who can keep up with that, not someone who just thinks like, oh, they've already got it all figured out. And so I think you have an opportunity to really showcase your quest for knowledge, your curiosity, and that makes you, look kind of like a thought leader in many people's eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things. I've talked about this a lot in marketing over the years, and you just touched on it, but like thinking about what's the subliminal message behind what you're posting?
Mm,
What you're saying is you're sharing this, these 3 takeaways or this one thing you learned,
yeah.
but what it's telling people, the subliminal message is, I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah. I read books.
I
I read
yeah,
articles. Look at
I'm
me.
I'm constantly looking out for the new thing. Like you can count on me to be on the cutting edge.
Right.
So, I always think about that. Like if I post this, what is it telling people without overtly telling them? And I don't think a lot of people always think that way, but I think, it's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of time to just sit back and think, okay, how do I want to be perceived? What is this going to tell people? Um, my personal Facebook, for example, I posted a lot of pictures when we first bought our house and we were doing more projects then. We have
Hmm.
kind of slowed down a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'd post pictures of me out, digging in the yard, working on a project,
Yeah.
no makeup, ratty work clothes. Like I was not like, and I wouldn't post necessarily on LinkedIn, but I would
Yeah.
post it on Facebook where I'm friends with a lot of people in my business network.
Yeah.
And I wanted people to understand that, like, one, I'm a real person,
Hmm.
but also like, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I'm
Yeah.
not
Get dirty and
afraid
do the
to
work.
do the work. And so, subconsciously I knew like, hey, this is going to show people that they can trust me. They can
Yeah.
rely on me to get their job done, whether it's working on
Hmm.
something on a computer or it's, me working on
Yeah.
something
I
in my
like that
yard. So
subliminal message.
yeah, the subliminal message. So
And
yeah,
it doesn't take much, right? We've talked about this in our calls in the past. It doesn't take much for people to see something a few times and that resonates with them, and it clicks in their mind that like that's part of your brand. Like, oh, Valerie's into home improvement, or she's a hard worker. Like I gave an example, we talked a few weeks ago, where I have a road bike and I'm not a regular cyclist, but like every now and then, like once a month, I go out for a long ride and I'll post about it. And people will come up to me like, oh, you're a cyclist. Like, well, I don't know if I'm a cyclist. Like, I just ride every now and then, but I post about it and you think I'm a cyclist now
Yeah.
because you make that connection. You see it every now and then. And people don't think about the passage of time between, the last post, whatever it may be. So that's why I say,
Right.
going back to, if you posted once a week on LinkedIn about an article or a book that you read, people, once a month or once a week, at the end of all that time, all people are going to think is, man, she is always reading books or
Right.
sharing articles. Like she is a voracious reader or learner, just like you said, and it's going to be part of your brand.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the consistency too, I think is key here.
Yep.
And not expecting that people are going to understand that just from one specific thing. But I think, be, the word I love from what you started off with, and then it came to mind just now as you were talking, is the word thoughtful. Because it's
Mm,
not that we're trying to be manipulative
right.
in this. It's not that we're trying to be, fake or whatever. It's we just are trying to be thoughtful of how are we showing up in the world. And if me posting a picture in front of, a Lamborghini in my driveway, or me
Yeah.
out, driving around, and like, what's that going to tell people?
Right.
Like, I just try to be very thoughtful of like, how is this going to come across? Are people going to want
Mm-hmm.
to engage with me more, or is
Yep.
this going to push them off? So
Yep.
I love that you're putting this into the personal brand space and the career space.
Yeah. What's
So
interesting, I just thought of there, sorry to interrupt you, is just
you're
that
good.
idea of I'm always trying to be very thoughtful about what I'm putting out there, to be my brand. And again, not to be manipulative. I try to be authentic in what I do. I share vulnerable posts as well. It's not like, oh, let me always just set things up and make them look like my life is great. But I try to be thoughtful. But at the same time, I think there's a balance, because a lot of times people overthink, and I do this too.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, what are people going to think? And then they talk themselves out of posting something. And I've done this myself many times.
Yeah, I have too.
And I think it's better to be out there than not, right? Even if you think like, oh, this isn't perfect, I'm not sure how people would react. Because I just want, I'm posting, my goal is usually to post every day on LinkedIn, and then I'll post usually on LinkedIn or Instagram and other places as well, but to be out there as much as possible, because I want people to think of me, like
Yeah.
whether it's to inspire them and help them, or for corporate businesses to hire me, whatever it may be. When the time comes, when they have a need, they're going to think like, who do I know? And if it's been 6 months since you posted something, they're probably going to forget about you, no matter how great you are.
Yeah.
And if it was every day, they'd be like, yeah, that guy Andy's always on my feed talking about career development, and now I have this need. Like, I should probably reach out to him. And so I'm thinking about that a lot too. Like, be thoughtful, but don't overthink it, because I think, I go to the kind of the Gary V school of content, maybe not like 20 pieces of content a day, but like we need to be consistently putting stuff out there to get in front of people.
Yeah, there was it's my new favorite quote is a John Steinbeck quote, which is
Hmm.
now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good.
Yes.
And I love that, because the goal is not perfection. I see this with clients a lot, where like they just get hung up on things
Mm,
being done just so, and as a result, then there's huge gaps in their posting, and on social media, it's not doing you any favors.
right.
So
Out of sight, out of mind.
yeah, you want to stay top of mind with people, regardless of whether you are building your personal brand in your personal career, or you are trying to grow like a company.
Right.
So yeah, I'm curious, like if you were to think back through like how you've marketed yourself to your network, what have been some things that stick out to you as like, hey, that was a really, successful thing that I did that got me some good results?
So, I'll take this from a couple different approaches. One is more of the like philosophical connecting with people. I
Mhm.
think the things that I've done really well that have brought me great results in, um, getting people to relate to things that I'm posting, to want to potentially take action, to react favorably, is that most of the content I create, and I know a lot of people do this, most of the content I create is either for me or for my younger self. So like, I know in
Mm.
marketing, it's important to like know your avatar, right? Or know who you are speaking to or you're trying to market to. Well, for me, it's pretty easy because I'm usually speaking to myself or myself, 5 or 10 years back. Like, what did I wish I knew? Here
Mm.
are the things, the lessons I'm learning.
I love that.
Here are the things that I wish I knew. And therefore, I know there's going to be a lot of people that can relate to that, because even though we believe that we are all unique snowflakes and nobody is like us and nobody has the same problems or the same feelings, the truth of the matter is almost everything that we struggle with, almost everything that we're excited about, almost everything we enjoy, there are also thousands or millions of other people who also can relate to that, right? And have the same
Yeah.
challenges. And so if you've found a way to overcome some challenges and you share that, there are going to be people that can benefit from that. So a lot of the content I share is geared towards that advice I want to like give myself, like, oh yeah, I forgot this lesson, let me remind myself, and I'll just go ahead and post it and remind other people. um,
Mm.
Tactical things that I've done that have worked really well for me. I have 3 podcasts. So podcasting over the years has been really beneficial, just to have like regular content going out, getting into people's ears. Doing interview format shows like what you're doing right here has
Right.
allowed me to connect with so many other influential people in different spaces, whether it be clients, partners, friends, all kinds of stuff over the last, 5 years I've been podcasting now.
Nice.
That's been really beneficial. Along with that, building a network of influential people who can support each other has always been really, really helpful. Um, Sharing content on a consistent basis, I think and focusing on LinkedIn, which is the platform for me because I'm in the corporate space, has been really successful for me. And again, like, I think consistency over trying to be perfect, because I've had many days where I didn't get hardly any reactions to my posts, but I keep putting stuff out there and trying to get better. And I always have clients who tell me like, oh, I see your stuff all the time on LinkedIn, even if they don't react to it, right? They see it.
Yeah.
Um, Getting personal with even with LinkedIn and other places, and sharing openly about my life allows people to really connect with me. And then like also on a tactical level, I've hosted a conference. I've hosted 2 virtual summits. The virtual summits were really great for building a bigger audience and building my email list, connecting with other speakers and influential people. Having a book has probably been the biggest thing that I've done. I know you have a book as well.
Right.
Like
It's a
the
beast.
biggest
It's a
thing.
beast to do. It's a lot of
Yeah, it's a
work.
hard thing to do, but it's the biggest impact as far
Yeah.
as building brand and like marketing my brand and who I am and getting a message out there. Caveat to that, which is that you know this as well as I do. You can't just publish a book and expect that it's going to boost your brand or people are going to find you, like, because
Yeah.
they're not going to find it, right? And we can talk about all the things I do to market my book because I'm constantly marketing it. But having that as like a centerpiece of my brand, and it's something that I can always showcase and point people back to, has been just huge for me and my brand and my business. And I'm building my whole business around it essentially now. So it could be something else. It doesn't always have to be a book, but a book is a really great marketing piece because it's something that showcases to people that you know something, right? Like
Yeah.
the root of authority is author. And when people see that you published a book, it changes something in their mind. And it does this for me all the time. I have friends that publish books and it's the same friend that I knew before, but I'm like, oh, she's an author now. Like she must know a lot of, like, I think of her, think of you
Right.
differently, right? That happens to, I notice the switch in my mind when people publish books.
Right.
So I know other people think that way as well. And so, I'm not an advocate of just publishing a book just to do it, right? I think there really needs to be a great message there. But that's a foundational piece to everything I do and is a great marketing piece as well.
Wow. Okay. So you just shared off a ton of things that have been helpful. I love that. And I'm a huge advocate for the book as well. I think that's such a great tool that can be used if you position it properly. You can use that book over and over and over again for
Yeah,
years and years and years.
ever.
So, and I've watched you do that now for a few years. So that's been fun to see. Um, is there something you've tried in terms of marketing your brand that hasn't worked well? And how did you turn that experience into like, how did you turn that, or how did you respond to that when it didn't go well?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried a lot of things over the years, whether it be like business things or marketing. I mentioned I hosted a couple virtual summits. Both of them went pretty well, not like amazing, but both pretty good. I've tried some ad campaigns in the past that didn't, I don't think I really got much benefit from. I have tried launching some different products, courses, communities that didn't really sell much in like the B2C space. I found that
Mm,
for some reason I've just had no success going that route, even though I do put a lot of content out there to help individuals. My niche and where I found all of my success seems to be on the, on the corporate side of things. I'm trying to think of like on a from a marketing perspective, like what have I done? I think because I operate on such a micro level, it's like daily posts, that kind of thing, that there's just been a lot of, I mean, I can tell you, I've spent hours and hours creating posts that have done nothing, right? That's just like
right.
nobody, like one, like nobody
Crickets.
reacted to this, did not get the reaction I thought it would. And it can be so frustrating sometimes. And I see other people doing things that are getting, tons of engagement. And some of those I try to mimic, and some of those I'm like, no, that's just not something I'm going to do. And so I'm always learning and watching other people. And then I think we got to kind of adapt. I have tried, like lately, I would say, I think the from a marketing social media perspective, the craze is in creating like creative videos for Instagram Reels and TikTok.
Hmm.
And I've really struggled there. I'm certainly not against it. Like I want to jump in there. I've created a few videos, and then just haven't done, not very many people watched them. And that's because I haven't gotten very creative with them, right? I kind of just do the trial, like, oh, let me go talk to a camera for 1 minute and put that up there, like I've done on LinkedIn and other places. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to improve. But and a lesson I've learned in that area for myself and for others is to not try to shy away from those platforms just because like, oh, that's for the kids, right? TikTok is for young kids. Like, no, no, no. There are a lot of people, very successful influencers who are doing great business and impacting a lot of people in all kinds of different areas, right? On TikTok, there's a woman who's making a lot of money doing Excel training on TikTok right now. So it's not like it's just for teenagers to
Right.
sing and dance, right? There's so much opportunity there. So I want to embrace that more. I haven't had very much success so far, but I can't think of anything like, because I don't run any like big marketing campaigns that's been, necessarily like a flop. It's just a lot of micro wins and losses.
Yeah. Well, one thing I loved about what you just shared was the fact that you had tried targeting more of the B2C,
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, these, you know, in my understanding of that is those are individual people who might want career coaching, or
Mhm.
they're looking to improve their career.
Yeah.
Targeting
Yeah.
those people wasn't as successful as targeting the companies and the people within corporations or larger organizations that would come hire you to train or speak to their employees.
Right.
So what I heard was you tried something, you discovered that that wasn't the right audience, but in that process you learned who your real audience was, and instead then you've leaned into that audience. um,
Yeah. I've doubled
One
down on
thing,
that this year for sure. Spending
yeah,
most of my time on the corporate space now.
but I love too the fact that like you are still, because ultimately you are helping individuals, right?
Yep.
You're selling more to the people and the decision makers within a company, but ultimately they want to help their employees out, they want to
Right.
provide value to their employees. So you're still speaking kind of to that B2C, but you have that
Yeah.
subliminal like understanding of, hey, I know that this is ultimately trying to reach the, people in the HR department or the people in the training
Mhm.
department or whoever within the organization that ultimately is going to hire you. So I love the fact
Right.
that you've tried some things, maybe they didn't work, but you learned something from it and you've leaned into what's working instead of what wasn't.
Oh
So
yeah, and I'm huge on operating with a growth mindset. Based on the book Mindset: New Psychology for Success by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford, and I summarize that in the chapter on mindset in my book because I think it is so important. Operating with growth mindset, which means you're willing to try different things and not worry so much about failure. Like if I try something and it doesn't work, yeah, it's disappointing, but we can learn from it and then make a pivot. And so, yeah, I created the online course. We were trying more of the B2C stuff. I was launching a new community for individuals to join, and I just wasn't getting any traction. Meanwhile, I'm seeing all this momentum on the corporate side of my business with companies wanting to hire me to speak and train their people. So I'm like, I'm not going to try to force something that's not working. I'm going to go double down on what is working. And
Yeah.
I have tons and tons of relationships from being in consulting for, 10 years in the corporate space. So let me go double down on that, join a community, get a coach and help and like really focus my time on doing the corporate stuff. And it seems to be paying off.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, if people want to get more from you, where would you tell them to go look?
Well, there's so many places. I'm all over the place.
He
So
mentioned a few.
yeah, if you're interested in the book is called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. It's available on Amazon. I also have free resources on my website, including the 5 steps to owning your career, the top 5 most common career mistakes that people make, some other personal things that I use, like my morning routine to achieve more success. That's all on the website, ownyourcareerownyourlife.com/bonus, ownyourcareerownyourlife.com/bonus. I've got 3 podcasts, as we mentioned: the Own Your Career Show, the Talent Development Hot Seat, my NFT Journey, and I'm active on all the social channels, LinkedIn being the most, but Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well, and TikTok. So hit me up.
And TikTok. Well, there you have it. You've just heard some amazing advice about personal branding for your career and how to start owning your career and ultimately owning your life from my friend Andy Storch. So Andy, thanks so much for joining me today and sharing just some amazing wisdom with everyone.
Thank you, Valerie. And if I could leave one thing with your listeners, it's to
Absolutely.
remember that nobody cares more about your career than you do, right? Hopefully, your mom is around and she really cares about you. You might have a great manager who cares about you, but really, ultimately, nobody cares more about your career than you do. So you've got to be the one to own it. You've got to be the one to figure out where you want to go, what you want to achieve, set some goals, and put the time out there to take action.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks, Andy, for that last little mic drop. And make sure to check out the show notes to get all of the links to Andy's different podcasts and his resources. Thanks again, Andy.
Thank you.
If you liked what you just heard, please hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave us a review. That not only helps us out, but it helps others discover great interviews just like this one.